Hey everybody, today we have Scott, also known as Comdad. How are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. So I wanted to bring you on. I've had a lot of parents locally reach out to me, just like, "Hey, you're doing this esports thing. One, what's it all about? And like, should my kid be pursuing a professional esports career?" And so knowing how competitive this is, and also all the business things that parents may not know about on the back end, like sports contracts and such. I thought I'd bring in an expert on somebody who has raised an esports champion and not only just how to raise a good kid in general, but in this very new space of esports. So I guess my first question was, what was it that as a parent you were just like, okay, this is a hobby that's now becoming a career. What was that tipping point for you when Com approached you with that idea?
So the first thing, I guess the first time we knew it was something big, I was at work, my wife was asleep, and my son called up and said, "Hey, Dad, or woke my wife up and said, 'Hey, is my passport current?'" And he was 15 years old, and I'm like, "Well, what do you need a passport for?" He's like, "Well, we just qualified for this tournament. We got to go to Toronto." He paired up with somebody from New Jersey and somebody from California, um, and he didn't have current passports. We had to rush a passport, get it for him. We went up with him to Toronto when he was 15, and he won some North America Gaming Championship, but I qualified them for an RLCS tournament in Montreal. Um, and I think at that point, when we traveled all the way we were living in Mississippi at the time, from Mississippi to Toronto and going to other countries, it's like, okay, there's something here. That's when we realized it was kind of something big. Then I want to say a year or two later, we took him to DreamHack Atlanta. He said, "Hey, I want to do this." We were living in Mississippi. It was about a 6.5 hour drive. He said, "I'm going to put together a team." We put together a team, drove out there, got a hotel, did DreamHack Atlanta. It was a booster
Mm-hmm.
series, so it wasn't a big tournament. A lot of college teams there and so forth. And while we were there, he started getting offered gaming scholarships to college. And we're like, okay, there's something here. And then they ended up winning that. And I remember my son, and my son's very articulate and very well spoken. So he came up to us afterwards and he said, "Hey, this is something I really want to pursue. Um, I would like to take a gap year before I go to college and explore my opportunities with the game." And it was one of those, okay, well, let's sit down, we'll talk about it, we'll weigh out the pros and cons. And I think that was when we really knew um, it was viable. And then he got signed to his first pro contract with version one as a senior in high school. So that kind of helped out also.
Yeah, so that brings up I guess the first big point, like when entering this space, is like, how did you allow him to have this hobby in a healthy fashion to allow him to get this good without it being uh, a point where he was just shut away and ignoring the rest of his life to play this video game?
So he did both. He grew up playing soccer, um, but he did play a lot of video games. And we set boundaries for him. So, but it was a different type of boundaries and a different type of parenting. Um, our parenting was goal oriented. So he was a straight A student at the time. He started wanting to spend more time playing the video games. And I said, "Okay, Robert, I'll make a deal with you." I said, "You can do it your way as long as you get A's." I said, "I won't step in. I won't tell you what to do. I won't tell you what time to go to bed. I won't tell you what time to get off the computer. I won't tell you what time to get up." I said, "But the first B you get, I take over and you do it my way, which is going to be doing your homework first when you come home, not staying up too late and so forth." And it drove me absolutely nuts. I mean, but I stuck to it. But there were times where he was up till 2 in the morning in high school, 2 in the morning playing a video game. And then getting up at 6 in the morning to write a 4-page paper that was due that day because he put it off. I'd make comments. I could have done it in an easier way. But yeah, lo and behold, he never got a B. So he was straight A's, but it was one of those, and it's something I think we'll get into later on. You can't throw all your eggs in one pot,
Hmm.
or eggs in a basket, I guess. So, I want to make sure he had a backup. He did have the schooling. He had opportunities that he could go to if the gaming didn't work out.
Yeah, I think that's one of things that I've noticed from like the more successful, uh, I guess like kids I've known, is their parents are like, okay, you want to do something? Okay, and make sure your responsibilities are taken care of, and then we'll give you this freedom in this space. Or they hand the freedom and the responsibilities together, and they're like, you can't have one without the other.
No, you can't, and it's kind of teaching them that. Like I said, I mean, at times it would drive me nuts,
Mm-hmm.
but we were not just giving them the freedom; we were giving them the responsibility. And I said, I'll treat you like an adult, but you've got to understand this is the priority. And he didn't let us down.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So when it comes to that, like, was it him? Was it more about the way that he was going about things that was like stressful and annoying to you as the parent, or was it like what was it that kind of like made you want to make those comments to him about, could have done it this easier way, like?
Yeah, it was the way, like I said, waking up. It would, he could have written that 4-page paper the day before instead of waking up, setting an alarm to get up at 6 a.m., hitting his snooze button 3 times, and then trying to write it paper in 45 minutes
Mm-hmm.
before he heads into school and heads into class. He easily could have written that the day before when he got home, instead of going straight to the computer, instead of going, um, take care of business first instead of procrastinating.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he says now, well, Dad, I work much better under stress. No, that's just an excuse. But
As that Calvin and Hobbes comic, there's no better motivation than last minute panic.
yeah, exactly. So, um, but it was one of the things I learned through experience in life. I'm not going to say I wasn't there and I hadn't done the same thing most of my life. Now I'm one of those people. I like to plan things, get things done up front, and not have to worry about cramming it at the end. I don't know if that's just because I'm older.
Yeah, so you gave him that chance to learn on his own and experience why these other ways could be better. If it's one thing to be like, hey, like this is the way to do it. And if you haven't done it the hard way, you don't understand why what you're doing is the easy way.
Exactly. I mean, the original plan was, hey, I'll give him enough rope,
Mm-hmm.
as the saying goes, and he took all the rope and just
Mm-hmm.
tied a little knot with it, did whatever. He never hung himself. He just kept on going.
Yeah. So when he started to do that, when he started to make these tournaments, what about it was all of a sudden be like, hey, Dad, can I go to Canada as a 15-year-old? What about that tournament made you go, okay, like this is worth, spending some time doing? Because I know a lot of parents, they'd be like, okay, why do we want to go to Canada for video games? Like, what was it that he said to you that, I guess, put it in perspective on like how important this was to him and like how much potential this was? Or was there already just a relationship there and established that you guys had that open communication and there was that trust already built? Or was it like a mix of the two?
Say, I'd say the latter. We already had the communication. Um, but I knew nothing about the video game, knew nothing about the gaming world. I mean, I knew he played video games. I couldn't have told you what Rocket League was. When he told me about the tournament he was getting into, he had to explain to me what the game was. And I
Hmm.
came and watched over his shoulder and watched him play. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Not understanding, it's funny, my wife and I were the other day, were sitting in Copenhagen, and we looked at each other and we're like, you know, can you believe that we're sitting here in Copenhagen, Denmark, because of our son's video games? And who would have ever thought that or pictured that 5 years ago? Um, so I think there was the first tournament, and then the $10,000 prize pool, which now we look at just
Hmm.
new prize pools, but at
Yeah.
15, when they won it, like, okay, you can make a little bit of money at this. And then he started following him a little bit more, and we actually started talking more about Rocket League. He's like, yeah, Dad, I just show match on Johnny Boy's stream the other day and made $900.
Hmm.
People said, what are flip resets?
Hmm.
How many flip resets goals they get? They'll donate another $100, and they end up winning the show match. And things started to get bigger. He was streaming, so we'd go in and watch his streams. And people would come in and donate money. And we're like, okay, there's a viable avenue here. And then, like I said, Atlanta Dream Hack, and seeing more people out there watching it. But then, like I said, senior year when he signed his, I say that, but we started following him right away from that point in that tournament. We've always followed him,
Hmm.
always supported him. I mean, I coached most of his soccer teams. Um, he played 2 seasons a year. They won a state championship when he was younger. So we've always supported him in what he did, anyways. But then when he got into RLRS, starting with Bullsend, I mean, my wife and I would sit outside, um, have a fire going. We had a TV outside, so we'd sit out there and pull him up and could hear him screaming in the other room.
Hmm.
And we're out there, doing the same thing. And the more and more we got into it, I mean, we always joke now whenever he plays, we got to up our blood pressure medicine, and
Hmm.
um, definitely been a lot of ups and downs. But yeah, so I think part of it was the money, part of it was supporting him, and he had a clear goal in mind. Um, there was. I think one of the hardest things was you have this plan for your child, and everybody thinks that college is the way to go. College is the way to go.
Hmm.
And with him, he could have gone to any school he wanted to easily in the United States. I mean, when I told you he was getting gamer scholarship offers at DreamHack, that was just for his gaming. I mean, they
Yeah.
didn't know that he was a straight A student. He scored a perfect score on his ACT. He scored a 36. Um, and scored a 34 as a sophomore and took it again, got 36 as a junior. So, got an award for being one of the top 20 students in all of Mississippi. He could have gone to any school he wanted to. So you had these plans, and he's like, okay, I'm going to game. And turns out it's probably the, best decision he's ever made. But there was, and in explaining that to my parents, his grandparents, oh, yeah, Robert's,
Hmm.
great in school, but he's not going to go to school. He's going to play video games.
Yeah.
That was another conversation. But now they watch, they follow,
Hmm.
um, and I've always said I'll support my son with whatever decision he makes. I'll try and guide him in the right direction,
Hmm.
um, and pass on some of my wisdom. But then again, he's doing something right. So
Yeah, it's almost like the goal of parenting is to raise another adult that can make their own decisions.
absolutely, well said.
Yeah. I think moving into this, just like on the time frame, like when he was getting these scholarship offers, this was right before version 1 started to get in, I guess, negotiations with you guys. Did you guys have a concept of that, like him getting picked up and being on a team and not just competing for prize money, or was that also something that was kind of a shock to you?
It had been mentioned to us. My son had told us about it. He's like, "Hey, this player is making this much money with this team." And at the time, my son was playing for bubble teams. Whether it was Bolson, Monkey Business, Adept. Um, so when he got a chance to try out for version one, that was when he got his first salary offer and contract offer. Um, I had a friend that was an attorney that does contracts also, so I was able to get the contract, have him look it over. Um, but at that point, and it wasn't. I mean, I won't go. I'm not going to go into salary levels, but
Yeah.
it wasn't really high for his first signing.
Hmm.
Um, it and I can say
It was a rookie
after
contract.
after after a year, it made a
Mhm.
large jump.
Yeah.
But I hadn't expected that at the time either. I thought, okay, this is enough money to, especially for an 18-year-old.
Hmm.
Um, when I was in high school, I was working at the local candy store or working, like a minimum wage,
Hmm.
boardwalk fries or something, whatever it was. Um, so here he is, making an adult salary.
Hmm.
Um, at 18 years old while he's in high school. So it was a shocker, in a good way. But even then, I never would have imagined where it actually ended up going and where it went.
Yeah. So I guess what were your safeguards in place at that point? Uh, just like as a parent, just like when it came to uh like the contract negotiation, and like how did your friend like explain like the general terms of the contract? Like was it pretty much just like here's the salary and like here's the expenses we'll cover? Was it just kind of like the more standard contract? I don't know how far we can go without breaking any NDAs if there are any, but
Yeah, I
like.
don't. I mean, you know, I thought at first, oh, I'll just look the contract over. I'm good.
Mhm.
21 pages later, I'm like, okay, you know what? I really need to have somebody professional look over the contract. Um, most of it is, the time length, the pay, the percentage of prize pool. Um, it's I say a 1-and-1, so it's basically a 1-year contract with a 1-year option.
Mhm.
Um, there were, and then I'll even say now there are contracts now where there are behavior clauses in there.
Mhm.
Um, I call them behavior clauses. I'm not sure exactly what the term is, but um, you know, you've got to protect the brand,
Mhm.
and there's stipulations in there. But I just want to make sure there wasn't anything taken advantage of them.
Mhm.
And as part of my friend looked over, he said it's pretty much a standard sports contract, which was interesting to me because I'm like, okay, it's sports, and a lot of people
Mhm.
think it's video games. And it's funny you bring this up because I saw a video yesterday. I don't know if you ever saw Shaq talking about esports,
Yeah.
where he said they are athletes.
Mhm.
I thought that was great. But
Yeah, was that the one where he was on the bus with Garrett G and the NRG boys? Or is that a different one?
this one, he was sitting on a couch and somebody was talking to him, but it was
Okay.
probably
Mhm.
basically probably the same conversation. But I thought, wow, you know what? That's really cool. He, talked about some of the things he's done.
Mhm.
Driving a race car with Dale Earnhardt was one of the toughest things he ever did in his life. Um, but yeah, but yeah, they are athletes.
Yeah, that's the way I try to explain it people is, back in, the late 1800s, early 1900s, people really liked playing baseball. And then they were like, hey, these guys are really good at baseball. It's fun to watch people that are good at baseball. Fast forward 100 years, and you have the MLB in the state that it's in now, uh, with all the eyes and sponsorships and money flowing through it. And so we're just kind of at that beginning stage, but we also have the acceleration that the internet offers, with it not just being like the local towns, anybody can tune in. And so uh, esports definitely poses some unique challenges on that side of things, but that's a whole different conversation. But that's how I've found the easiest way to like explain like esports to people that don't necessarily get it.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So I guess moving into the version one era, after that first contract and meeting the team, what was it like having somebody else coach your son for once? Or I don't know if you were the only coach for his soccer teams, or if he had other things that he got coaching in. What was
No,
it
we
like,
always
kind of
had.
handing those reins over to a Fireburner?
No, and trust me, I never coached him in Rocket League. He tried to coach me a couple of times. Yeah, it didn't work out. But handing it over to him was, we loved it when they started playing together. But it was a little different. We had just moved right before his senior year. I ended up I got an opportunity to move to Florida,
Hmm.
and with COVID and everything going on, I came down. We let my wife and my son stayed up so he could finish his senior year. As soon as he graduated, we bought a house down here, 4-bedroom house, so he could have an office and a gaming room and everything. Moved in July and October. He turned 18 October 1st, October 2nd. Version one said, "Oh, come on, let's move you up to Minnesota."
Hmm.
So he moved down on his own the day after he turned 18. Version one put him up in a luxury apartment right off of their esports headquarters was on the Viking campus. So
Hmm.
he would literally walk over to esports headquarters. He was right there. They provided him 5 meals a day. It's a great place to live. They moved Fireburner up there. They moved Torment up there. So he was surrounded by um, people that were on his team. He was surrounded by his coach. Um, so I really didn't have a problem handing any reins over. We always had dual coaching anyways, and I want him to have the best, and you know I can coach him in life as far as I can. As far as Rocket League, I'm not going to be able to. I might be able to do some coaching now. But I've been watching
Hmm.
it for you know 5 years at a competitive level. So, but tough letting him go. But he went up there and blossomed, and um, and I know we'll probably talk about this in a minute, but there are ups and downs. People don't get the pressure that's on you at a high level org. Um, people think that once you get there, you're there. And that's not the case. It is extremely um, mentally exhausting and physically exhausting to maintain and um, stay there. But emotionally, the ups and downs are just. I mean, there are times, especially as a parent, you wish you could take some hurt away. I mean, it's just
Hmm.
it's been up and down. Like I said, we can talk about that later. But
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest change that I've noticed, just working my way up now into the professional level, is everybody's really focused on getting that contract, getting signed to an org, and they're like, "I've made it." And I think the easiest analogy for like parents to get is like, it's almost like the people that are really excited to get married versus being excited to start a marriage or start a family. Uh, like the parallel between that, I think, is like the closest way I can describe it. Is it's one thing to be like, cool, we had a wedding, we signed the contract. Uh, it's a whole nother to, here's my family now, and raising a family and having a family, having a good relationship with your spouse. and actually having a marriage versus just cool, we signed a contract.
A marriage versus a wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it is. And a lot of people don't realize the hard work and dedication that goes into it. I mean, I was talking with somebody, actually, I was talking with my mom, and she had talked about coming to Atlanta. She's like, "Oh, I can't wait to see Robert." I'm like, "Well, you're not going to see Robert at Atlanta. Um, it doesn't matter whether it's Copenhagen, it doesn't matter whether it's World, LA. When they're there, they're working. I mean, they're long days. There's
Mm-hmm.
media shoots, there's press, there's interviews, there's RLCS, there's it's an opportunity. Your org is going to be doing all kinds of stuff, and then on top of that, you're playing Rocket League. I mean, you're in those scrim rooms all day. You come out, you grab a bite to eat, and you're back in. The first 2, 4, 5 days, Copenhagen, the only time we saw our son was when we passed him in the lobby of the hotel. Um, they don't understand. They're like, "Oh, you get to go to Copenhagen, you get to go to London, you get to go to Rotterdam." Half the time they don't even see the place they're at. They see the airport, the hotel, the arena, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever trip on the way, and maybe somewhere. If you go out with your team for dinner and you're not eating at the um, I don't say
I guess
the
like the
team food
cafeteria.
area,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, so we laugh and joke about it. You're traveling the world, not seeing anything. And the good thing is we're traveling on his coattails, and we get to go out. But
Mm-hmm.
they don't realize that it's work. I mean, these guys, he's scrimming 3, 4 hours a day, um, and they scrim pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Um, OG does, and then after that, you're playing twos to keep your skills up. Um, you know, I'm sure people talk about the different reasons you play ones, twos, and threes.
Mm-hmm.
And um, most pros will play twos when they're not playing threes or when they're not playing with their team.
Mm-hmm.
But threes is working on your team chemistry and so forth, and twos is a little bit better working on skills and so forth. But yeah, it's so then you've got 8, 9, 10 hours that you're putting in a day, and that's just on Rocket League.
Yeah. And then you
Um,
have to do this thing called eating and sleeping and taking care of yourself and paying bills and everything else that comes with just staying alive.
the great thing is they have auto pay on bills now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
Robert set that up. They have DoorDash and Uber, but and then I'm also extremely proud of our son. When he originally moved out, he, like I say, he stopped playing soccer for years and got into the game, and I mean, he got up to almost 230 pounds, and he's down to about 170 right now. That was one of the great things. V1 got him a personal trainer, believed in feel good, play good.
Mm-hmm.
But he's taken it to another level since he left them, and does it on his own. He's at the gym every day, but he understands. He wants to take care of himself, eating healthy. Just like I said, I couldn't be more proud watching him grow up and understanding that. And but yeah, so he's got the Rocket League all day. He's got the getting to the gym, getting your food like you said, and sometimes getting some sleep in there.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And, you know, humans are social creatures as well. And so there's a certain level of you got to have some level of like healthy relationships and spending time with people, or you're just going to go crazy. And so finding the time to do that, if there is time at all, like there's a lot more sacrifice in this one. I think what people realize, it's very similar to, I guess, owning a business where you're spending, you know, 40 hours a week being an employee of your business and then another 20 to 30 hours being the boss of the business. Uh, it's very, it can be a very isolating thing. And so I guess that leads into, what were you doing to make sure or I guess, he was an adult at this point. Like, what was he doing to make sure that he maintained mental health and not just, burn himself out and become completely isolated?
You know, it's a tough one because I will say, I won't go into too much detail, but I will say it is something that he did struggle with. Um, and he did have a girlfriend he lived with up in Minnesota for a while. Um, and I think after they broke up, and I think after the split with version one, where he wasn't living in the same place as Fire and Torment and them. I think there was definitely a challenge there, a hole there. And I think he was able to recognize it. And reached out to us and other places, advice.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that, put into the gym. And then I know for a fact, sometimes he was like, you know what, I need some friends. And one of the great things after, you win Gamers 8 and
Mm-hmm.
you've been getting a decent salary, you're like, okay, I'm going to fly my friends from high school over to, see me, come
Yeah.
stay with me. So, he'll get 4 or 5 of his friends and buy them all flights and have them all fly out and spend the weekend and, give him a chance to see some friends, have that interaction, social interaction. And then there are also some people where he lives that are gamers also that he is friends with. Some Rocket League players on other teams. They, like I said, I won't go into names or details
Yeah.
or anything else, but I can say we're friends with their family too. And got to see him out in Copenhagen, but it's a tough mental battle, and it's not just, and it's the good old snowball effect too. So
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned earlier with Body and him going to the gym about feel good, play good. Well, it's also the mental aspect, feel good, play good. So, there are times where I think he struggled with the monotony. Okay, I'm waking up, I'm playing Rocket League, I'm ordering food, I'm going to the gym, I'm coming home, I'm playing Rocket League, I'm going to sleep, I'm waking up, I'm playing Rocket League. Um, and sometimes I think that can become very monotonous,
Mm-hmm.
and you start to find yourself, in a tough mental area, and then you go in, and you play,
And then you have
and
a
if you
rush
don't
of
do well,
emotions. Yeah.
yeah,
You have
if
a
you
rush of
don't do
emotions
well,
either way.
it snowballs down.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go in there and you're all hyped up, and one of the great things, and I mean, join OG. They're actually boot camping this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Decided not to wait till the last regional of the split, and doing it the first regional split.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he flew out yesterday, but it gets him out there, gets him, in the right frame of mind with his teammates. Creates a real positive environment. So I'm excited about that. But you hit on the head. The emotional and mental toll that it takes. And not to bring up a point I'm sure you've touched on or talked about in the past, but RLCS dropping the age to 13
Mm-hmm.
blew my mind. I mean, I know my son is an 18-year-old who is extremely smart, extremely gifted, does well. I mean, well, he's 20-year-old now. I know how hard it is on him. And watching other players grow up also. I've been in the scene long enough that I know other parents, other players.
Mm-hmm.
It is tough. I mean, these kids, I still call them kids. They get beat up. I mean, they're. I guarantee you, there were some tears shed yesterday
Oh yeah.
when some people did not make the main event.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's heartbreaking to watch your child. I mean, I can remember them, my son's, I think the only player to ever come in last in a regional and make a major, and come in first in a regional and not make a major.
Hmm.
And I remember that regional that cost them worlds last year, and him getting interviewed right afterwards, just bawling, just tears pouring down.
Yeah.
And it is heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking, the breaking up of version one. Where do you go? What do I do now? Where's my future now? Um, and the stress that puts on somebody, because now you've got somebody that has, you know, put off that schooling. I mean, I think he still plans on eventually going,
Hmm.
um, but not at that time of the year. All applications are in.
Yeah.
Um, but the uncertainty of your future at that point. And like I said, now fortunately, he's smart. He's
Hmm.
putting money away. He won Gamers 8, so he was in a situation where there wasn't a huge rush as far as livelihood goes.
Hmm.
But he also understands there's a short window here. I
Yeah.
mean, your career in esports, and especially Rocket League. I mean,
It could be
we
one
joke
split,
about
one regional.
our guys are the old guys.
Yeah.
We got Apps at 24, who's one of the oldest. You got Nolly 22, and Robert Comet 20. I mean, they're the oldest team in RLCS right now, split wise, at least
Hmm.
in NA. So, but watching that struggle of building a team, and it's not at that point. It's not finding people to play with. Okay, he's been a pro long enough. He could play with anybody and get scrims with, or tryouts with just about anybody. But it's finding that team chemistry. A lot of people
Hmm.
think you just put three good players on a team and they're going to make things work, and that's not how it works. It's really building those people where you get along with, as far as um, your work ethics are the same. You're going to be putting in that same amount of time. Your attitudes. There's no. You got people that are going to listen, that are receptive to coaching, that want to learn, that want to get better, that are willing to try different things, and finding those people whose play styles mesh together. It's not like you just go out and grab, okay, I've got this person that's a free agent, this person's a free agent, and we're going to be a competitive team. Because they're not looking to go and just play Rocket League. They want to be competitive. They want to win worlds. They want
Hmm.
to. It's a lot of pressure, on anybody.
Yeah, it's definitely a different mindset of I want to be good at this and I want to win the world championship. And not just it would be cool if it happened. It's like no, like this is our goal, this is what we're working towards. Uh I think this is also like one of the weirder spaces where like our success is our friend's failure. And so that's a weird dynamic in esports. So it's like if I
So
win the
I'll
LAN, like it's because you didn't. And that's the I don't know. Like that I think that's the weirdest dynamic I've realized coming in and how the players have balanced it into be as polite and cordial and maintain the friendships across like this stressful of a situation where like those are the stakes. That's what has impressed me most among the players, especially for how young they are.
Yeah, it is. I'll bring an example from a parent standpoint. So when we were in Copenhagen, um, my son's friends with Slater Reynolds, and we're friends with his parents, and we're all watching. We're able to watch a party together. And for anybody that knows, Reynolds' dad is the ultimate hype man of any event, any land. He is crazy, creates signs and all that stuff. So we're at this watch party. There's about 20 plus parents, about 100 and some odd people there, and it's Luminosity versus OG on the to move forward for knockout.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so of course we cheer for each other during and so forth, or we cheer. It's the only time we cheer against each other.
Yeah.
I won't say against each other. We cheer for our team.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going crazy and screaming every time OG does something. He's going crazy, holding up the luminosity signs, and every time they do come crazy. And luminosity ended up knocking OG out. And afterwards, I went up to Reddle's dad, and we hug, and he's crying, and he said, "I can't believe I'm crying after winning." And they weren't tears of joy; they were tears because he felt our pain and the pain for our son. So you bring up a good point when you say, and the players are the same way. You're sitting up there against your best friend, and it's or a great friend, and it's one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll actually, I don't know if you ever, they'll talk a little trash across the aisle too, but afterwards,
Yeah.
it's hugs, handshakes, love you, brother, great match, and I'm going to get you next time, sort of thing.
Yeah. I think when it
Right.
comes to like that environment, I think with it being that there's only maybe 150 people in the world that are near or at that level, like being in that small group I think definitely helps. And the fact that, hey, there's not many other people like us, that I think helps create that community.
It does, and it brings up another good point just while we're on this, because I had a lot of parents when we were at Worlds asking me, how can I get my son to become an esports player? How can I help him? I said, and my biggest thing was, we'll support him 100%. I mean, I've always supported my son. Set down some boundaries, have a backup plan. I mean, you've got to realize, and I think we were at Worlds. How many teams were there at Worlds that year? Was it 24?
Yeah,
Yeah.
24.
So there were 24 teams at Worlds.
15 kids from
That's
Europe,
72
15 kids.
players.
Yeah.
So there are 72 players out of millions and millions that play this game. Everybody, wants to be a pro. Everybody says they want to be a pro. I used to always ask my son, I was like, well, hey, if you're so great at Rocket League, you're great at Call of Duty. I used to watch you get, nukes all the time. Why don't you go play Call of Duty? He's like, Dad, I have 5,000 hours in Call of Duty. The people that are pros have 25,000 hours. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a different level. So you've got to understand. I mean, people can have that goal, people can have that plan, but don't. It's like being a pro football player. You start out with all these peewees, down at the beginning, and as you move up high school, how many of those go to college and how many of the college ones actually go pro. It's not saying that you shouldn't support your child or that it's not going to happen. But once again, there were 72 people in the world that were good enough to be at Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
And, the other thing comes down to, we were talking about orgs and so forth, and the pressure that's put on people is a lot of orgs out there they're not in it they're in it to win it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you look at the trade windows that come around, I mean, I get nervous. At first I was never nervous. So it was version 1, we're placing, we're top 3 in the world, top 4 in the world, we're looking good. And then all of a sudden there's a change that comes down the chute. There's a rumor of a change, the first time, and that didn't happen. Things kind of fell apart after that. But then an actual change came next. But here you are, they're making every regional, every land, they're competing, and you think things are going well, and it's all, well, no, we want to be number 1. What do we need to do to be number 1? And it took what we thought at the time was a job security to all of a sudden where, oh, okay. And it's just that much more pressure that's on these kids. Like I said, you look at the off season. I mean, I don't see teams that are the same. I mean, even when we look at last year, between the phase of the G2s, the SSGs, I mean, There's not a team NRG. There's not a team that was there last year that's there this year,
I think
and
Vitality is
it's
the only one.
same format. Okay, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they had added Zen right before that, so it
True.
was kind
Yeah.
of a mid-season, you know. So,
Yeah.
um, but you know, there's so the volatility up there um, is nuts.
Yeah.
But these guys are, you know, some of the best at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, that pressure to win, it just goes. If they're not winning, if they're not number one, it's like, okay, what change can we do to be number one? And that's tough.
Yeah. And in esports, you can be number one and your org can still end up dropping you. You know, there's been several orgs like, I think most recently, like Evil Geniuses, like they won the Valorant World Championship and they're like, all right, cool, we're dropping our team. It's like, the esports world is a very volatile place. And I think making sure you have those safeguards in place, and you know, this is kind of the next topic I wanted to bring up, is like on the financial side of it. uh there's a lot of money in it, but also with a lot of money, there's a lot of money you can be stupid with now. So obviously Com was pretty smart, the way he's handled things, but what were some things that you, I guess, instilled in him growing up, that, you know, getting the probably $120,000 after taxes from, you know, the what was it, Gamers 8 last year, you know, that prepared him to be like, all right, son, you just got handed $120,000, like, and you being confident that he'll do well with that. Because I think if, you know, I handed 18-year-old, 19-year-old me $120,000, it was just like, cool, be smart with this. I would not have been smart with this. So, what are the things that you instilled in him to manage that well and manage the opportunities well, I guess you'd say, financially?
Well, a lot of it. So a lot of it he did, and we had discussions. Don't get me wrong, um, but he understands that number one, it's a short window. Okay, like I said, I say short window, small window. I mean, you're looking, you know, he's looking 5 years, you know, being a pro. It's a window for him to make as much as he can in a short time. Then we talk, you know, if he goes to school, the advantage of having that is you go to school with money in your bank, as opposed to when I went to school. You know, I'm eating ramen noodles out of a little microwave in a dorm room. Um, you know, just trying to survive. And he's the one that said, "Listen," he said, "I don't want to work my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've got an opportunity to make a lot of money at the beginning of my life." He's like, "If I'm smart with my money and I do, you know, proper investing and so forth, um, I have the opportunity to retire at a younger age." And then he looks at other people and content creators out there that are doing very well for themselves. Some, you know, Rocket League, and um, you know, he's trying to set him. He has the ability to go to school and college and stuff afterwards. I don't think he wants to.
Mm-hmm.
I think he wants to be able to do his own thing, and this money will be a vessel to get him there. He is not. He doesn't go out and buy any flashy cars. He doesn't do any. You know, he puts his money away. You know, doesn't even get a gym membership. Well, you know, he has a personal trainer that he talks to on the phone that he had met,
Mm-hmm.
but when he was with V1. But other than that, you know, meals, and like I said, once in a while he'll splurge and get some of his friends from high school or something, and throw a few $100s out there. But he's not a flashy person. He's not going to go out and buy a, you know, $400 pair of shoes. I say that one of his first purchases after winning North American Gaming
Mhm.
championship with a pair of Gucci slides, but that had to do with more of marketing himself back when he was tweeting because he jumped out of his shoes when they won the tournament,
Mhm.
hit slides and walked across the stage barefoot. Um, but no, but it's the conversation that needs to happen is you have this opportunity right now to get a really head start in life that a lot of people don't have. You have this opportunity to take this money, put it away, invest, business, property, whatever it may be. And our big thing was get somebody that knows how to invest involved. Um, there are people you can reach out to, and especially at a young age. Some of these larger firms that normally wouldn't take people with, I'd say, a small investment of 100,000.
Mhm.
They will when they're looking at a 20-year-old because normally they don't have people coming to them till in their mid 40s, so they have huge potential for growth. So reaching out and letting him understand. I mean, my son knows that afterwards is still an unknown. I mean, there are avenues he can take. There are people he's met, networking he's done
Mhm.
uh, throughout being in the esports scene. But they say there's going to be a huge uncertainty coming up. So the money that he makes now, he's hoping that's his future. That he can live off that for a long time.
Yeah. I think also just being a public figure, uh, how was that transition for him going from just sitting in my gaming chair playing video games to okay, now I'm this public figure and I've got to talk on camera every now and again. I've got to have a Twitter. I've got to deal with everybody being like, you suck, or hey, like all the craziness that comes with being, I guess, like a niche celebrity, in our space. How was how did you prepare him for that?
I don't. He's one of the best speakers I've ever heard, and people love to interview him. He's not one of those. Um, well, first he doesn't say a lot. He doesn't, but what did y'all do to prepare? Well, we practiced hard. No, my son's like, we went in with two strategies. We tried this, and he just goes off. And meanwhile, we're like over here looking at the source to see what that word means, or a
Hmm.
dictionary. Um, he always had that ability. Um, One of the biggest challenges, and it was him that introduced us to Twitch and streaming. It wasn't the other way around.
Hmm.
Um, and then I'm glad he didn't take my advice. With the history of my son, our scariest, or when it comes to him being a celebrity, was when he decided to go to London and play the villain,
Hmm.
um, which was really different for us. And then, like I said, he's ended up getting some threats online. He wasn't allowed to travel through London without people from the org with him because of some of the stuff that came out. And at the end of the day, he explained it to me. It's all the players are friends. So the ones he was talking trash to would come up
Hmm.
afterwards and say, "Hey, we knew it was coming. We knew he was going to talk trash to us. We didn't want him to get in our head, and it didn't work. He got in our heads." Um, but he played that role perfect, and from a marketing standpoint, it was genius.
Hmm.
It's like the WWE. You had the bad guy, and he went out there and talked a little bit of trash, and then played into the crowds by turning around and, "Come on, I can't hear you. I can't hear you." Um, the irony is when the big scene of him doing that up on stage with the crowd and everybody booing and all that stuff, the team he had just beat was Nolly's team, who's his teammate now.
Yeah.
Back when it was beat Carmine Corp in London. So um, uh, that was when we talk about him being a celebrity in public. That was a huge shock when it became how big he was out there and in that situation. The other thing was when we went to LA or we went to London or Worlds. He couldn't come down and just walk through the crowd. He had some friends from high school he wanted to go sit with. So they came and they all got around him and he had to walk through the hood and down and, to get down and sit with them in their seats for a little bit. My wife and I, when we would go to the events and we loved it, but we didn't expect it. I remember our first LAN, we're walking down the street and all of a sudden you hear people go, oh, let's go, Mom, let's go, Dad. And they're whispering over there. I just turn and say, hey, normal person. Next thing you know, we're at the arena. People are walking up with, hats,
Mhm.
controllers. Can you sign? I'm like, yeah, sure. So it was a shock for us too. Um, but because we didn't realize how big it was until you're sitting there like at Worlds with, 13,000 other Rocket League fans, and you realize every single person that's there knows Rocket League and knows who your son is. Um,
And then there's another
and it's
400,000
very
online
humbling.
watching. Yeah. It's the online space and like the LAN spaces and the interaction of the crowd and having people know you, it's a different level of accountability as well. Because I can say and do dumb stuff. I'm not that well known or that necessarily important in the scene, so to speak. The average Rocket League player is not going to know who I am. But once you get higher visibility, like what you say matters more and it has more impact on things. So, what do you think has prepared him for that type of responsibility where, the stuff that he does say carries that much weight to so many people?
I think he's always been a caring person, anyways. Like I say, he may have been known as the villain out there, but anybody that's talked to my son or has met my son knows his heart's in the right spot. He is actually very respectful of others, very caring. But I think a lot of it came through growth of not being that big to becoming that big,
Mm-hmm.
and the growth process along the way. And he's actually a lot more tame now. You don't see you see the maturity growing, and that goes back to me talking about putting a 13-year-old with this pressure and this stuff on him. I mean, I've watched my son grow through the stage. I've watched my son deal with the trolls that are out there that come up, and it doesn't matter what you've done. They're going to tell you how bad you are and how you're the worst Rocket League player in the world. And as parents and my son, he has to read that stuff. I mean, it's they're just mean people out there. But he's always had an incredible heart. Uh, yeah, I'll leave it at that for right now. I
Yeah.
don't know how much to go into, but he grew up taking care of a brother, and it's like I can go into. He knows that what he says matters, and like I
Yeah.
said,
So, I guess if there was anything that we haven't covered so far, that if a parent came up to you and was like, "Hey, my son is interested in esports in general now and going down this path, maybe collegiately or competitively," like, is there anything that I've asked or like forgotten to ask about that you wish you knew going in as a parent, being like, okay, my 13-year-old kid wants to go into esports. This has been a great podcast and I've learned a lot, but I'm still wondering about this. Like, what would you as a parent want to know that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
so I keep on using the word support. We support our son. We support our son. We support our son. Right? There are different levels of support, but one of the things that I see, and that, like I said, I've always said we support our son, and when I say support, now we go above and beyond. I mean, license plates on our cars are "Calm Mom" and "Calm Dad," and I say above and beyond But one of the things that I think I was most surprised about was when I met the other families and the other parents at the lands. And a lot of times we'll get in the chat before, and I see a common, I say common theme there. I mean, every one of the parents are at that level of support. So um, when I say support, support was taking our son to Toronto. Support was taking our son to Montreal a few weeks later after they won that. Support was driving our son out to DreamHack. We spent more on the trip to DreamHack than he was going to win. It was a $5,000 boost tournament. So first place, I'm guessing, was probably about $2,000. By the time we had gone, dinner, meals, gas, hotel, we spent more than he made. I wasn't able to go. My wife took him to Worlds in New Jersey. I'll never forget the day that my son sat there and where he told my wife, as he's watching the pro players walk out there, he said, "One day that'll be me." And the day that he did it in Dallas, I broke down in tears. But there are things that we did along the way to help support him. Whether it was taking him to different events, and then showing the interest. You have to have a backup because, like I said, I mean, 72 players went to Worlds.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it's so much more important if you show the interest, if you want to watch your son. I mean, my son knows that every single match he has. I mean, even if I'm at work, I put it on work TV.
Mhm.
So my employees now follow Rocket League and Robert
Yeah.
Com. But it's and then another thing is I missed a few lands and because of work and so forth, and that hit me. We're not getting this time back.
Mhm.
Once it's gone, it's gone, and it's not only is it a short window for him, it's a short window for us to enjoy with him. So live it up, love it. Be proud. You can reach out. You can reach out to just about any pros parents out there. Like I said, I don't care if it's Riddle's parents, Jay Knapp's dad, Papa Rizzo, Torment's dad. I say a lot of dads because I talk to them off also, but I mean the moms too. And it didn't matter if they were from UK or Europe or Snowy's parents from South Africa in Copenhagen. It was just the common theme was a level of support and going to the events and giving that love and support to your children. So
Yeah. And I think the important thing that I noticed was it, even if you guys had driven out to Atlanta and he competed that tournament and uh, let's say like he didn't get those scholarship offers, like he wasn't, he was one of the other probably 300 kids there that didn't end up making pro careers out of this. Spending that time and doing that hobby, like I think even if that Rocket League didn't necessarily turn out for him, uh, having your parents support you attempting to do these things is going to give them the confidence that if and when this thing doesn't work out, they know their parents are behind them. And when they try the next thing, they go, okay, my parents are behind me. They're going to help me do this in a healthy way. And so even if, your son or daughter doesn't end up being a pro gamer, having that support behind them, I think sets them up for success long term more than, any Rocket League contract ever could.
absolutely 100%. Like I said, when he did that, that was pre-contract. If he won or lost, it didn't matter to us. We were just taking him out there so he could compete because it was something he wanted to do. When we took him to New Jersey, he was playing for a bubble team. Maybe he was playing for Bolsend at the time. I mean, it may have been right near the beginning. I'm trying to remember which season New Jersey was. Season 6.
I think it
Maybe that was
was
season 6.
yeah, it was
Um,
one of those like seasons where it was basically like 4 seasons back to back to back. Uh,
yeah,
Basically, what
yeah.
we call splits now was an entire season. Uh,
But we took him up there. He was at the time. I mean, he got thrills out of. I'm trying to remember who he was playing. I don't know if it was Violent Panda or somebody, whoever it was, playing him in ones at the arena. Nobody knew who he was.
mhm.
Um, this was he won a twos tournament with Dino off with the head off of the arena over a nearby place. But when we took him up there for that, that was so he could go watch and enjoy, and I think that opened um, our eyes also, just seeing how big it was. But yeah, it's that support. I mean, like I said, he wasn't at that point. This was no career. This was just him. He won one tournament and wanted to go up there and watch this. Supporting and spending that time together and doing something that he enjoyed. It's. I think a lot of parents try to mold their kids to enjoy what they enjoy instead of taking the time back and learning to enjoy what your children enjoy.
Mhm.
Um, but means the world to us. So do anything in the world.
Yeah. So you're saying the relationship with your son is the most important thing in the relationship with your son, not anything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think sometimes we overcomplicate uh, things because we're so focused on an end result like college, just like a kid could be so focused on becoming a pro esports player that they miss the opportunities that are sitting right in front of them, and the relationships that they can form right then and there.
I agree 1,000%.
Yeah. Well, I guess, is there anything else before we wrap up this podcast episode? Thanks for coming on, giving your perspective. One of the things that I want to do for this community is, provide resources for all aspects of the community. And parenting an esports pro is something I saw was a void, and so I was like, yeah, let's get Scott in here. So, do you have anything else that you want to say, or do you think that people need to know about as parenting esports, or do you think we've covered
No,
all
I
the
think we touched just
bases?
about everything. Like I said, you can always reach out. Most of the parents are very, very receptive too. Um, and we'll see a lot of similarities, you're surprised that a lot of things you think are very unique to you are not. Like, when our sons were, you creep in with his dinner because he's playing a game, and you'd set it on his desk next to where he's playing and creep back out because you didn't want to make any noise because he's streaming or whatever else. So you think you're the only person that did it. And you start talking to another parent, and they're like, oh no, that was a nightly ritual. This was
Mhm.
this, yeah. And you start sharing that, you realize that there's a lot of other people out there that if you have questions about the parenting or some of the trials and tribulations, it's not all roses.
Yeah,
Um, if you got any questions, feel free to reach out.
yeah. And hey, I've left his Twitter handle in the description, so if you guys are looking for somebody to reach out, thanks for being that resource for other parents.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Thank you all for stopping